It's so wonderful. Are you setting me up to use this?
Yeah, do you want to do that?
Should I? Can you hear me back there? Yeah?
Just you gotta
Okay.
keep that gusto.
I will keep the gusto. So thanks everybody for being here. Before I talk about what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about something else, which is yesterday we had a celebration of the Buddha's birthday. And this was the second time we've done that, and the first time we've done it here. Or maybe last year we did it here too, but Jomon came down and led the ceremony itself, and we built a flower, what's it called? Flower bower, yeah. And there were a number of us who worked on that, and we had the great pleasure of being able to just go and snip flowers and ferns in the garden and just put it freshly in. So the whole thing was just beautiful. And I think we're going to have a picture in the newsletter of it. And a number of families came, some of whom are here tonight, and a number of kids came who were little and excited and just wonderful. And everybody made an offering to the Buddha of flowers, and then they poured a scoop of water over the baby Buddha, the statue that Zazen made, which is a cute little statue. And then we chanted together and sang, had some wonderful food. The wise parents brought a bunch of protein before the cake. So we had this unusual experience of many children being together and nobody crashed. It was really, really striking. And we were witness to some beautiful parenting and some wonderful elderhood of people who were not the parents, but interacted with the kids in a way that was very, very loving and supportive of the children. It was quite wonderful. And then one of them who has come, and he's come with his father and actually sat here during one of our practice times, asked if he could ring the bell, one of the small bells that we keep in the dining area. And he did that a little bit, and then I said, well, would you like to ring the big bell in the Zendo? And he was like, he lit up. So we came, and then all the other kids came in, and so we had all of these little people, including 2 toddlers, who were ringing the bells, playing the makugyo. The little one who played the makugyo, I thought, if she ever comes with her dad, I'm going to have her do the makugyo. She had the most regular hitting and perfect bounce of the mallet, and yeah, it was quite wonderful. And everybody left feeling full of cake and love and goodness. And also the children made birthday cards for the Buddha. I think we still have one on the front. I'm not sure. I didn't look. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little report about that event. The way that we put it out in the newsletter, it sounded like it was just for families and kids. But I hope that next year we can let everybody know that it's coming in time for you to decide you're going to join us. Because it's not a ceremony just for kids. It's a ceremony that has to do with the coming forth of the life in all of us in the ways that it does. So it was quite wonderful. Never heard so much noise. I mean, joyful noise. But it was very loud and lots of activity. And here we are, the adults, quiet, sitting. So last week, I talked about Zazen, breath. I wanted to follow that up with a talk that I might call Getting Up from Zazen. Because we don't only practice for quiet sitting our whole life. The Bodhisattva vow is to bring the mind that is wide open into our daily activity in all of its forms, so that it doesn't seem like the same. It's not the same quiet still, but it is a view that hatches out of that quiet stillness that is available all the time when we learn how to discern that. And that's why this is practice. We practice, and we always come back regularly to quiet sitting. Returning to activity, whether it's during the day or at night after our sitting, is part of the very regular pattern of our life. We sit and then we go into activity. It's an unavoidable transition that we do. So one of the things that last week I was talking about was transitioning to Zazen. That there is a whole thing when we come in and we've been active during the day and we sit down, we're not immediately settled. There's a whole transition, which is unavoidable. And if we think about our whole life, we're always in transition. So we can study, and we can kind of highlight transition coming into Zazen, and then also transition coming out of Zazen into activity, which is then generalizable into all the transitions in our life, some of which are much more challenging than others. You know, for those who have no issues with sleep, the transition to sleep at night after Zazen is not terribly challenging. One is because if you sit before you go to bed, the mind has run down. You've kind of done the day review. It's part of transitioning into Zazen. And then by the time you actually get into bed, you're so much more attuned and so much more in the body as it is, and then you can just drop off into sleep. If you're a person who has difficulty with sleep, then that can be a much more challenging time, because there are grooves that are well practiced in settling into sleep, if that has been your groove, you know. So we always have, the more we are willing to experience whatever the quality of in the transition is, good. And we don't add judgment on top of whatever it is, a judgment that's not useful. The other thing is that part of this transition into action is we don't want to disqualify any aspect of our experience. So an example of that is thinking that if you're not in kind of Zazen mode in the middle of activity, you're not really practicing. That's a disqualification, right? Which is not accurate, actually. Because, Dogen talks about continuous practice. He doesn't mean only sitting on the zazen. He means wholehearted engagement in whatever we're doing. Wholehearted engagement in stillness, wholehearted engagement in activity, in motion. So each time we get up, we're kind of pulling into a new season of present moment, a season of action and activity. Moving the physical body, engaging the senses, kind of putting everything in reverse that we did when we sat down. Engaging the senses and engaging the narratives. They automatically start up. And the narratives are all mixed in with the senses and the material world and agendas and all of the dynamic energies that animate us and our world and our days. It's very constantly, the dynamism is constant. The energies are a swirl all around us. And they're really clearly noticeable when we turn on the news. There's a total, startup of a different kind of energy, a different kind of emotion, a different kind of breath, a different kind of bodily sensation. But this is always happening. So you get up, you get up out of this calm place where you've been meditating, where you've been refraining from activity of the body and mind. Even if you don't get very far with it, it's different. It's always different at the end of a period at Zazen than it was when you started. No matter whether you say you've had a good sit or not. And one of the things that we're doing in Zazen is we are disengaging from our karmic patterns somewhat. When we think about karma, karma is action. And all of the patterns of action, all of the seeds that any action that we take develops and plants in the world. And sooner or later, any action that we take of body, speech, and mind has effects, whether we know about them or not, whether they're subtle or they're gross. So that's all the karmic outpour that that we're always working with. So when we're sitting in still body and mind, we're generating fewer seeds going forward. And this is part of engaging the bodhisattva way of life, where we switch all of what we enact. The source of it changes from karma to a vow. Sitting quietly in Zazen, the energy of the spirit, which is free of habit and open and complete, kinda, sorta, sometimes, to varying degrees. And then we get up and we go out into our daily life, and we're freer to respond to what comes toward us from the vow to be of service, to be of help in the world, unimpeded by our twisted patterns and projections. So we come from a clearer source. It's something that is so apparent in the early morning sits. When you start, not just a 10-minute sit, but a half hour or even longer if you can do it. It's so clear, the clarity is so obvious that you at least begin with in the day. So we come from a clearer source when we do regular Zazen, and we wonder how to relate this to our life situations, which are way more complicated. I mean, one of the reasons why it's such a refuge to come here is there's just one thing going on. We just do one thing, which is we don't even do, we be, right? Just, okay, sit down and just be. That's pretty simple. But then we go to work, we go home, either solo or with our family life, which is pretty complicated usually, or to work, or in the community activities. So now I wanted to bring into this, thinking about it, that phrase from, I first learned about it from Lakota teachings, which is that phrase, all my relations. And I learned that the Lakota, the language that they speak is part of the Sioux language family. There are a lot of different languages that are related to that, and their spirituality is very much a spirituality of all my relations, the connection of everything and everything. And so thinking about anything that I have a relationship with is my family, is my intimate family, is my community. So first of all of the inanimate objects. How do I take care of my inanimate world? Everything in this environment, how do I take care of it? And I'm talking about not the non-sentient, the non-living environment. So we clean, we tidy, we keep track of our papers, maybe. We aim to be a good steward of our possessions and those of others. And we're led in that by all of the precepts. So that's the inanimate world, and then there's the animate, which is constantly giving us feedback. So all the living world, and beside human beings, plants, and there are 382,000 accepted species of plants, and probably since that number was gathered, it's increased because more and more are found every day, and also disappearing, some of them. So that plants, trees, shrubs, grasses, bulbs, ferns, anything that grows from seed, we take care of in one way or another. My daughter called me tonight just filled with joy at the peas that are coming up and all of the greens that are coming up, and we really are so cared for by the plant world, and we care for them, hopefully. The animals, the four-leggeds and the two-leggeds, and the winged ones, the birds and insects, water beings, the fish and frogs. And I have a pond behind my house, and there were 6 bald eagles that came to the pond yesterday, which was quite the event. And just their presence, it felt like a massive blessing. And probably most of you spend a lot of time outside, and you know how blessed you feel when you meet an animal that is not domesticated. It's just such a blessing, such a joy in and of itself. And then there are the bacteria and the viruses. All of these are part of our living self that we affect in the way that we whether we practice or not. We affect in different ways. Practice is so important. And it lends a real appreciation for the majesty of life when we cultivate a wide and subtle sensibility. We really notice things that we may never have noticed before we began to practice. Internally and externally. So there are a lot of parts of ourselves that we never noticed. Inner voices that we had that we weren't listening to, that have been trying through, making something hurt. A tight shoulder, that's a voice, So all of these things, we pay attention to all of our relationships. That's part of our practice as much as Zazen. So when we wonder how to bring practice into our daily life, there is never a moment when we can't bring the attitude of almost devotion to whatever is at hand. One of the things that's so wonderful about Samu, which is what we call work practice here, is that we can do that all the time. Samu is giving whatever the task at hand is, our complete attention. And when there are 10 or 20 or 50 things going on at the same time, how do we practice then? And that's where creativity comes in. That's where really strengthening our sense of agency, of the source of life flowing through us, having faith that we can respond true-heartedly to whatever is happening. I think of when the kids were little, they would often come at me with requests, 2 at a time, or their friends were there 8 at a time, and I'd have to say, my practice was learning how to say, hold on a second, 1 at a time, or they want to get permission to do something, and I have to give it to them right away. I'd say, well, if I have to give you a decision right now, the decision will be no. But if you give me a minute to think about it, we'll see. That's just an example of how maintaining your own root in presence really is very practical. It really helps. It helps cope well with whatever is presenting itself. So that's what the Bodhisattva way is. And we do our best. We're not always masterful in how we handle stuff. I certainly am not. But sometimes when it happens in a way that is really wise, it's very fulfilling. And it feels like it's a good use. It's a good use of this person. We talk about finding a sense of meaning in our lives. Well, meaning inheres in the completion of any moment. A moment that is completely engaged is filled with a sensation of meaning. Most of you come to sit pretty regularly. So, we get up, we have the standard set of things that we do, the choreography of the Zendo, so we finish and we bow. But as soon as we've done the last bow, it's up to each of us to start handling our life on our own, right? And so trouble can start up right away. If you really are in the grip of wanting to be good and to be well-liked, you don't want to make any mistakes thinking that, because we tell everybody what to do all the time. You think if you don't know what it is, then you're going to make a mistake. But that's a set of opposites that doesn't really compute here. Like, when you leave the Zendo, do you stop and turn around and bow to the Kuan Yin statue, or can you just walk out? That can be a moment where you get anxious. Or if you pass the altar in the founder's room, you're supposed to bow to the altar in the founder's room. That can be a moment to start getting anxious, to start feeling like, ooh, and self-conscious. So the self rises up. One of the things that we do when we're sitting is we're kind of dropping, to some extent, self-consciousness, because nobody's looking and we're just breathing and we have a minute to just, But as soon as we get up, the self-consciousness can reassert. And as soon as the self comes up, not self comes up. And we can really start to get into the observing the self, either with a friendly eye or a judgmental eye. When Jogan was here last week, he talked a lot about centering in the friend, finding the friend within, which I thought is a lovely, simple suggestion. Find the friend. So when you pass in front of the altar out there, what would the friend say? Well, the friend would probably say, let's bow together, or we don't have to, right? I mean, a friend is just there to be good with you and not judge, but guide, keep company with, keep mild company with. So what are some of the other suffering? So this is suffering. As soon as the self comes up and the othering happens and the self-consciousness comes up, what are some of the sufferings that come up right as you finish Zazen? Anything come to anybody's mind? The kind of suffering, yeah?
Could be body. When I try to get up, my leg's asleep because I've been in this, position, and got to make sure that if we're gonna, do walking meditation, I could actually stand.
Okay. That's a kind of a wholesome sense of keeping track of the body and space so that you don't harm the body. But you could also say, oh, I'm so old, I can't stand it. I used to be able to pop up and be such a life model of how to live in a body with flexibility and strength.
Sounds familiar.
And there can be some suffering in all of that, right? Yeah. What's another example?
Insecurity, or financial insecurity.
Immediately remembering that you were insecure financially. Worrying about money or some form of that. Yep. As soon as Zazen is over, that can take so many forms. I saw another hand over here.
Well, I was going to say, just walking out there and having to decide, how long will I stay before I leave? It's very minor, but it's something that wasn't there before, and all of a sudden, I have to make decisions.
Yeah, any kind of decision, all of the multitude of decisions. That's minor, but it's also, wouldn't it be interesting practice to tomorrow, starting when you first wake up, to start counting the number of decisions that you need to make as you go through one day of your life. I wonder what the discovery would be. You know? What do you think? What's the guess? How many decisions do you suppose you make?
500.
At least,
Okay, 500?
at least, I would say more than 500.
More than 500?
30,000.
30,000. And what if you make the wrong one?
Varies.
Whoops.
Yeah, so that's also built into this self. The self has to make a lot of decisions. And what if you are partnered? You have to coordinate the decisions with somebody else whose mind you can, even if you've known them for 50 years, you don't even know what they will think or where the trouble's going to come from in the decision. And what if you're alone? What if you're by yourself? The oppression of having to make every single decision, and the vulnerability and the reminder of being solo. So everything that we do all day is a wonderful opportunity to come back to fully embodying this moment in the best way that we can figure out right now. And let's see, what other notes do I have here? One other thing that keeps coming up, it's been a theme in my own practice, and I can't imagine having a practice where it's not a theme, and that's the theme of letting go. Letting go. So in Zazen, how do you drop body and mind? That can become very, very embroiling. How do you let go moment by moment in the course of a day of the last moment so that you can bring your whole self to this moment and to this moment, you know? The whole process of letting go. Anything that we give words to, we're automatically it becomes difficult, because words just plant us in some kind of habitual soil, you know. So being able to come to our direct experience can free us to see what is going on right now with much more flexibility. One of the things that comes forth for each of us is the appreciation for ourselves and our life. We can appreciate to go from kind of cursing all of the troubles that we have to appreciating all of the troubles that we have. All of the problems are guides. And after a while, one of the habits of mind, self-talk that can come up is that when something really difficult comes up, you say, whew, I wonder how I'm going to work with this. Which is a very different response to difficulty than a feeling of I'm never getting out of my troubles. Like, I wonder what do I notice? And it's also not, in that state of mind, I wonder how this is going to sort out part of the larger view is looking at all of the other things that are going on and the other people involved in whatever situation that are also agents acting. And unusual things can happen, like Carol and I were here doing some gardening a few days ago. And one of the things that we were remarking on was how in front there's so much grass growing all over the place. And it's really getting seed heads. And we were thinking, oh my God, how are we going to do this? We're going to have a work party, but we don't have any time to have a work party. Blah, 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 blah. And we talked about this on and off during the whole time we were here. And then we went out front and we were really kind of shaking our heads as we were looking at the grass. And our neighbor next door came over and he said, how would you feel? He said, I don't really have anything to do. And I noticed you have a lot of grass. How would you feel if I pulled the grass out? It was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah. I don't know what direction it comes from, but it was just so amusing and wonderful. And then we could help him out and say, yeah, if you need something to do, sure, go ahead. It was always, two-way street, at least. So that's an example of just really appreciating how things work. When you have a big view and you are willing to not know, to have don't know. I don't know how I'm going to work this out. But everything always works out one way or another. How will it happen? And you open your eyes and you see what else is going on here. What's going to affect the outcome? So this appreciation for our lives really grows and grows and grows. And it's a source of great mirth, I think, which is a nice thing to be able to have in a very troubled world, is to have a good laugh sometimes. So I just wanted to read this. It just happened to pop up on my computer when I was thinking about this talk like 2 hours ago. It's by Liesl Mueller, who's a poet, titled In Passing. So I'll finish with this poem. How swiftly the strained honey of afternoon light flows into the darkness, and the closed bud shrugs off its special mystery to break into blossom, as if what exists so that it can be lost and become precious. I'll read that again. How swiftly the strained honey of afternoon light flows into the darkness, and the closed bud shrugs off its special mystery to break into blossom, as if what exists so that it can be lost and become precious. So thank you, and I hope that this is an encouragement to us all to remember to take our whole day as a time for practice, with each thing that comes along, to respond with our whole hearts and our intelligence and our creativity and the spirit of appreciation.
Stage 5.